I just wanted to finish up with what that elevated heart rate really means. Stress from the body can come from a lack of nutrition. It can come from dehydration. It can obviously come from the stress of a workout. It can come from relationships. What you have to understand is when we're evaluating the stress of the body, we want to be looking at all the variables. Obviously, the element that I can control is your intensity and your duration and your rest interval. But what I can't control are things like your food intake, both volume and quality-wise. I can't control your volume of fluid intake, particularly clean water. So with that being said, what I'm trying to do is provide you a tool that allows you to be able to see whether or not you're giving your body what it needs really to recover on a daily basis. So the emails that had come in, what does an elevated heart rate really mean? There's a lot of elements, but for this first week, what I want you to understand is we're trying to make sure that you aren't cooking yourself. Like I have one person that was on the program who came down with the flu last week, and he was wondering should he or should he not try to complete his time trials. And the answer was absolutely not, because doing your baseline assessments, we want to see where the body is at in a healthy state, not where the body is at when it's under the influence of a virus. Okay, so those are the majority of the kind of the consistent consensus type of questions that came in this first week during testing. Yes, sir. Yeah. Great question, and I hope everybody's paying attention to this. And if I don't answer your question, I want you to stop me and ask me to go through it again, okay? If I was dealing with a mainstream fitness, general fitness person, I would say absolutely do not train. When you're dealing with elite athletes like yourselves, what you have to realize is when you exercise, your core body temperature does elevate. If you don't let the elevation of the heart rate get too high, and this is where there's some confusion, elevating the body temperature cooks the virus. That's what a fever is all about. Have you ever been woken up in the middle of the night when your body, you wake up and the sheets are soaking wet, and the consensus is, oh my goodness, I broke my fever. That's kind of something you'll hear people reference. What that means is the core body temperature elevated to the point that the virus literally died. Unfortunately, that usually means that your body temperature has to rise to a point that you begin to sweat. If you can exercise at a low intensity level and keep the heart rate from going too high, what you're able to do is you're able to elevate the temperature in an artificial setting, kill the virus. But the million-dollar question is, well, how high is too high? That's when your resting heart rate makes all the difference in the world. Because what ends up happening is, and we're going to talk about this with your heart rate spreadsheet tonight, the biggest thing with the heart rate spreadsheet, the biggest value of the heart rate spreadsheet, believe it or not, is keeping you from going too hard on your easy days. Remember what I said to you in our very first conversation. Every one of you who are on the phone are motivated to do the homework necessary to be the #1 rider in the country. What we have to do is we have to give you the tools so that you can understand, well, how much is too much, how hard is too hard, and how often is too often. So to answer your question, if we were 6 months into this and you had your heart rate spreadsheet, and I could say, okay, it's okay for you to exercise for 60 minutes, just keep it below heart rate 125. I'm just using that number loosely. We know that 125 is in zone 1, which means you're not going too hard. Then exercise is beneficial. But unfortunately, when the body's already under the stress of a virus, the heart rate's going to be up. So any just baseline, basic exercise that you do, you're going to notice that the heart rate shoots up. I'll give you an example. You might be able to ride your bicycle 15 miles an hour, but when you have a fever, you might be riding your bicycle at 8 miles an hour to keep the heart rate low enough. Remember, it's not about how fast you're riding your bicycle. At that point in time, your goal is to kill the virus. So the only way to do that is to not allow your body to get the heart rate up too high, because then you're wearing yourself out and you give the virus a chance to even get stronger versus cook it. And there's that real finite line. Is it beneficial? Yes. Would you see me say this in a mainstream news television program? No. If you see me on TV, if you hear me on other radio shows, the conversation is always heart rate's up more than 5 beats, don't train. But you have to remember, most general fitness people don't know what their average heart rate is, which is, by the way, the reason why I want you to keep your body analysis, and that's one of the reasons why Coach Jeannie and I are trying to hold you accountable. The body analysis is more for your benefit than it is ours. But if you don't keep a close tab on that, you're never going to know when your body's crossing that threshold from it's working and absorbing versus it's working and breaking down. And that's the fine line of overtraining versus undertraining. Did I answer that okay for you? Does that make sense? All right. All right, great. And yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, there was a spreadsheet that was sent out for the time trials and the assessments. That you should have received three spreadsheets to document your results. One would have been time trials, one would have been body analysis, and the third one was body measurements. And if by chance you didn't get it, no harm done at all, just email me, and this evening I will send that back out to you. All right. And these are great questions, guys, because there may be somebody else on the line that didn't get that document either. I'm not sure why the internet gremlins, because they go out to our master database of everybody that we're sponsoring, and not everybody's saying they're not receiving it. So some are falling through. Speak up. Don't hesitate. Remember, these tools are for you guys. So you're not going to hurt our feelings saying you didn't receive something, or, hey, this is my third request, I still haven't gotten it. We had one situation where I ended up having to send it to Coach Jeannie, and she had to send it, and the rider was able to receive it. I don't know. But the bottom line is we don't want to give up. We want to get it in your hands no matter what it takes. Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. And it's real important that you guys understand that. When you look at cycle number 1, and I apologize, I don't have that printout in front of me. Let's just say that the exercises are single leg shoulder press, abdominal crunch on a bench, and push-ups. What you're going to do is you're going to do shoulder press, abdominal crunch, push-ups, go right back to the top. Shoulder press, abdominal crunch, push-ups, then do your jump rope or your stars. So you want to go through the exercises twice in one cycle before you move on to the next cycle. What I want you guys to understand, and I'm going to ask this every week that we're on the phone, please do not share this science with anybody. Think about it. If I have you doing shoulder press, I'm working all the muscles in the shoulders. Then you lay down on the bench, your shoulders have a chance to rest while you do abdominal crunch. When you're doing abdominal crunch, you jump up and you go to push-ups. I'm working your chest and your triceps. When you go back to shoulder press, we're working the upper shoulder muscles, back to abdominals. The idea here is there's absolutely no reason for you to stand around in the gym and wait 30 seconds to rest between exercises. This is what we call functional integration. We're trying to get you to use multiple muscle groups. I'm trying to get you to never stop moving. The only time the muscles get a rest is when another muscle group is working. Now, for some of you, the workout may have taken an hour and 10, hour and 30 minutes. Trust me, it'll get quicker. The biggest challenge that you're going to have is if you're working out in a gym and you have to wait for equipment. That's usually what will slow somebody down. But what I always like to say is grab the dumbbells that you need, go off somewhere in the side of a gym. You literally need a 10 by 10 area and knock it out. You should be getting done with your workouts in about 35 to 45 minutes, strength-wise. Now that obviously means you have to have all your stuff in one place, because every time you walk back to the weight rack, or you go over to the TheraBands, or you go to the weight ball, medicine balls, or the fit ball, bring all that into your corner and then just knock it out. But it's a great question. You want to go through each exercise twice before you finish that cycle, then move on to cycle number 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then jump on the rower if you have access to one. Great question, because you want to make sure that you're doing it right. If you're going to do shoulder press and then wait 30 seconds and then do shoulder press, then do abdominal crunch and then wait 30 seconds and do abdominal crunch, you'll be there all night long. Alright? Any other questions? Those are good. Alright. I want you guys to take a look at your baseline assessments, and hopefully you printed them out. If not, you've got them in your computer there. There's a couple things that I want you to pay attention to. There's 2 tidbits of information that are the most vital out of this. Notice in your spreadsheet, and I'm looking at the one right now that was for the bicycle time trial, for example. Okay? You'll notice that I asked you to go 5 miles out, turn around, and come back. Now, for some of you, you had to produce this time trial on a spin bike. That's okay. But what I want you to realize is the reason why I broke up the 10 miles into 5-mile increments is if you go 5 miles and you get there in 15 minutes and then it takes you 25 minutes to go the second 5 miles, I'm able to help you and identify where your muscular weakness is. Okay? That's a combination of a lack of power and muscular endurance. So the second variable that I want you to pay attention to is notice that I asked you to indicate what was the maximum heart rate that your monitor captured during that 10-mile time trial. Okay? I want everybody to put their pens and pencils down and think about what I'm asking you to do. I needed to know what was the maximum heart rate that was achieved over a 10-mile time trial. When we get down to your heart rate spreadsheets, you're going to be plugging it into where it says bicycle. That's where you're going to be getting your maximum heart rate number. We're not going to be using generic formulas. We're going to be using your max heart rate number off of the bicycle in the month of January. You're going to fill that in your heart rate spreadsheet. And it's very important that you guys understand that, because your heart rate spreadsheet I just mentioned to you is the only tool that will keep you from overtraining. So if you toggle over to the tab that we sent you, the heart rate zones, you should have your run, you should have the Concept 2 and the bicycle right there. Plug in for the bicycle the date you did it, plug in what your max heart rate is. And we're going to talk about how you get your resting heart rate to fill out the spreadsheet. But before we go anywhere, is anybody confused on that? Your max heart rate achieved during the 10-mile time trial needs to be plugged into your heart rate spreadsheet. Yes, sir. You're going to be getting them this. See, what I didn't want to do is send you 9 or 10 files, because bless your heart, most of you guys are already overwhelmed already. What we're going to do is send them to you this week with your schedules. The most important part is making sure that you understand what numbers you're going to need so you can plug them in to your spreadsheets. Okay? And I'm glad that you said that. They have not been sent out at this point. One of the frustrations that we've gotten from some of you is it's like, my goodness, how much material are you going to send us? And I apologize if it seems overwhelming, but hopefully after tonight's call you'll see that we're starting in a very broad spectrum and we're starting to narrow this down quite quickly. And this is only after 1 week of being on the program. You bet. All right. So the next thing that I want you guys to understand is I want you to pull out the sheet that you had, which was your body analysis. Okay? And we're back to, once again, the importance of your body analysis. At this point, you guys are 10 days into keeping track of your heart rate in the morning. Okay? For those of you that weren't on the phone call last week, I want you to sit down and empty your bladder. I want you to take your pulse for 15 seconds and multiply it by 4. I want you to step up off the toilet onto a scale, and then I want you to fill out your body analysis. And that would be your waking heart rate, your morning weight with an empty bladder, document how many hours of sleep, go about your day, empty your bladder before you lay down to go to sleep, weigh yourself again, fill out your spreadsheet.